Psalm 46 verses 10 through 11 says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." What do you think of when you hear the word still? I imagine sitting in a quiet forest beside a babbling brook with nothing on my mind but the nature around me and the God who created it. When I think of stillness, I think of peace. That's something that we could use a lot more of in today's world. We are beset with wars and worries in both our daily lives and on the larger world scale. Wouldn't it be nice to just be still for a while? Well, my friends, God makes this possible for His people. He encourages us to be still because He is in control and He is with us. One of the best places in the Bible to turn to for this lesson is Luke chapter 8, which details the account of the disciples sailing in a storm. The story is short and simple, but very effective. It goes like this. One day, the disciples were sailing on a boat with Jesus when a great storm rolled in. Jesus was sleeping soundly below the deck, but the disciples were becoming more and more afraid. As the great waves crashed against the boat and threatened to capsize them, they woke up Jesus and said, "Master, Master, we're going down." In normal circumstances, this would have been an acceptable reaction. After all, many people drown in storms, but these were not normal circumstances. The disciples had the Son of God on their boat. They had no reason to fear any danger as long as Jesus was with them. When they woke Him up, Jesus calmed the wind and the waves and turned to the men saying, "Where is your faith?" The disciples doubted that Jesus would keep them safe. Instead of relying on the power of God, they allowed their fear of the storm to overwhelm their senses. They were convinced that they were going to die. They thought that the power of nature was stronger than the power of God. What they didn't realize is that God controls nature. Jesus was able to calm the storm because it was under His power. The disciples had never truly been in any danger, but their faith was tested that day. They learned that they had made a mistake in placing their fear in the storm instead of their faith in the Lord. Just a few chapters later, in Luke 10, we see another story of stillness, but this one takes place in a very different context. The story begins with Jesus arriving at the home of two sisters named Martha and Mary. Mary immediately sits at Jesus' feet and listens to Him speak. Martha, however, is bustling about the house, preparing for their visitor. She's concerned with His earthly comfort, and she becomes angry when her sister makes no attempt to help her. Martha complains to Jesus and asks Him to tell Mary to help her. But Jesus does no such thing. To Martha's surprise, Jesus rebukes her, saying, "You were worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." What Martha had interpreted as laziness on Mary's part, Jesus viewed as faithful stillness. Mary let go of her earthly concerns to sit still and focus on the heavenly concerns that Jesus shared. Martha failed to recognize that listening to Jesus was more important than preparing the house for Him. I love this example because I find it very relatable. While the story of the disciples in the storm is certainly powerful, it is somewhat harder to relate to because we are not often faced with life or death situations that require such faith and stillness. However, we all face daily worries that keep us from focusing on God. From the minute we wake up, we are concerned with what we will wear, what to eat for breakfast, making it to work on time, etc. Our minds begin to race at the start of the day and don't slow down until we fall asleep again at the end of it. It feels like life is a never-ending string of worries. But Jesus tells us that is not how we should live our lives. In Matthew 6, verse 25, Jesus says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear? Is not life more than food and the body more than clothes? We can get so caught up in our worries that we forsake our relationship with Christ. Like Martha, we spend time worrying about things that don't matter instead of taking the opportunity to get to know Christ better. Instead of waking up and immediately thinking about what you will have for breakfast, try praying to God right away and thanking Him for keeping you safe throughout the night. My friends, we sometimes equate stillness with laziness and assume it has no place in our lives. But there is strength to be found in stillness. Stillness is a way of connecting with God, and there is nothing stronger than Him. Therefore, stillness gives us strength in the Lord. When you think of strength, you might think of bravery. Maybe you picture a child standing up to a bully twice his size, like in the story of David and Goliath. But remember how David killed the giant. It was not simply with a sling and a stone, but with the power of the Lord. David remained steadfast and still in the Lord, knowing that God was with him and would protect him. It is because of his faith that David received the courage to stand up to and defeat Goliath. We find a similar story in Joshua 6, when the Israelites marched around Jericho for 7 days until the walls came crashing down. Instead of facing off against Jericho's army in a bloody battle, the Israelites placed their faith in the Lord and peacefully walked around it according to God's command. Their march was peaceful, and yet it had the desired effect because God rewarded their faithfulness by tearing down the wall. The strength demonstrated by David and the Israelites did not come from them, but from the Lord. They were brave enough to follow God's command even though it may have seemed crazy because they knew that God was with them. They knew that God would protect them. They rested in the stillness of the peace and confidence that God provides. Another wonderful reminder of this is found in Exodus 14, when the Israelites were trapped between the Red Sea on one side and the Pharaoh and his army on the other. But Moses said to them, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." After he said this, the Lord commanded Moses to raise his staff, and the Red Sea miraculously parted before their eyes. They crossed the sea on dry land, and when the Egyptians tried to follow them, the wall of water crashed down on them and caused them to drown. The Lord protected the Israelites, and they barely had to do anything. They simply had to follow Him and trust that He would lead them away safely. They had to find peace in their hearts to combat their fear of the army chasing them. And just as God said He would, He kept the Israelites safe and took care of the army for them. The Israelites were stronger than the Egyptians because they had God on their side, and they placed their trust in Him. God is always with His people, even when it doesn't seem like it. We can often be like the disciples and get so caught up in our fears that we forget about God's presence. Or we can place too much focus on our daily worries and forget to prioritize our relationship with God. As much as we desire peace and stillness, it can be harder to achieve than we would like. Let's talk about some practical ways we can achieve stillness in our everyday lives. One of these methods is scheduled stillness. Set aside a chunk of time each day to spend with God. Rid yourself of any distractions and place all of your focus on the Lord. You can always do this outside of your scheduled time as well, but it's important to have a set time dedicated to stillness each day to ensure that you maintain your focus on God and achieve stillness every day. What you do within this time may vary. For example, you may choose to spend the whole time praying to God. Or maybe you will spend time in nature and simply soak up God's majesty. You can also spend your time reading the Word to get to know God better. Whatever you do, make sure you are doing it with your whole heart. You can also take small, still moments throughout the day. Let's say you are about to go into a meeting where you are making a big presentation and your nerves are getting the better of you. Instead of leaning into your anxiety, lean into God. Take a moment to close your eyes and breathe. Direct your thoughts to heaven and ask God to fill you with His presence. These moments of stillness can give you the strength you need to face your task knowing that God is on your side. Anytime you are feeling afraid, anxious, or scared, take your emotions to God and let Him fill you with the peace of His presence. My friends, our lives can be busy and it can feel like we are constantly on the move. But we need to take time to be still and place our focus on Christ. Without these moments of stillness, we will place Christ low on our list of priorities instead of at the very top where He should always be. Take time out of your day to remember that God is with you now and forever. He is your fortress and your protector. He will take care of you always. All you need to do is trust in Him. Don't focus on the storm around you, but look towards the one who calms all storms. Don't worry about earthly things like food and clothes, but look to the Lord for His heavenly guidance. Achieving peace in this world feels impossible, but the Lord will provide you with spiritual peace, and He will remain by your side through every battle.